Developing right now, who pulled the trigger at the New Orleans Mother's Day Parade shooting that was captured in this Vine video? Now New Orleans police hoping this piece of tape will help them catch a shooter.
The Vera Institute of Justice is a New York-based nonprofit hired by the city of New Orleans to perform the function of risk assessment for pretrial defendants incarcerated in the Orleans Parish Prison.
Well, Vera, as you know, is a national not-for-profit organization. We've been here in New Orleans, at least had an office here for a little more than 5 years, although we started work here in late 2006.
The risk assessment is based upon a risk assessment instrument that determines a person's risk to the community for either reoffending or for skipping court.
We came up with a program which does, as it does generally in the country, assess individuals for their risk. So when defendants go to court, they are assessed for risk. The information is developed and provided to the judge so that the judge can make a fully informed release or detention decision at that first appearance. And that decision can be based on the risk that the defendant poses to either not return to court or to reoffend.
Developing right now, who pulled the trigger at the New Orleans Mother's Day Parade shooting that was captured in this Vine video? Now New Orleans police hoping this piece of tape will help them catch a shooter.
A gentleman by the name of Akeem Scott is accused of, on Mother's Day, shooting 19 people at a Mother's Day parade in New Orleans. He had been arrested in March of that same year, right before Mother's Day, and assessed through the Vera Institute of Justice, and they used their risk assessment tool. He apparently came out of the risk assessment with a score of a 3. And it was asked, how could he possibly come out as a 3 while he was in jail charged with illegal carrying of weapons, illegal possession of a stolen weapon, resisting an officer, possession of heroin, carrying weapons during the crime of violence with drugs, and contraband into the jail. And the question was, how could he come out with a 3? And then what would his assessment be after he shot 19 people? And the answer to that question, looking at their risk assessment, is he came out a 3 because that's all he qualified for, based on the questions that they asked. Vera did ask a number of questions that they were required to verify, but apparently failed to verify. Questions about his criminal history that turned up on the newspaper after the Mother's Day shooting that they didn't catch. Questions that they asked that he lied on. Questions about his status with school, that he was a high school graduate, which apparently was not true, and that he was attending college, which apparently was not true. His rating apparently after the Mother's Day shooting appears to be, instead of a 3, he would gain a few more points and he would become a 7. This is a 7 out of 24, meaning that he is still very low risk.
And of course there are going to be some people that are high risk and need to be retained in jail prior to trial because of the risk that they pose. But this moves to a risk-based system so that if they are low risk, regardless of whether they have money or not, they're able to be released prior to trial. And plus, as John was alluding to, the sort of corollary to that is that because you're innocent until proven guilty, you're entitled to be held under the least restrictive conditions that are necessary to ensure return to court and public safety. So if you are low risk, least restrictive probably means that you're entitled to be released on your own recognizance on a promise to return.
Weigh in at 260-0995, 877-585-0995. All right, with all the shootings we've had going on and what happened on Mother's Day, and we're finding out more about this Vera Institute. We've been talking about them. They're pretrial services people. They're in charge of it here in New Orleans and in other cities across the country. And we're finding that these people, well, they might be putting us all in danger. It might make us all less safe because of what they do. They're basically lobbyists that lobby judges to let these guys out or enroll in one of their services. They advocate for people not to go to jail, and that can be bad.
we have the pretrial release system in New Orleans does ratings on individuals in jail, and that rating is used to determine, as they say, their risk level. The problem with this rating, if you look at their website, they say that they're real keen on being open and transparent and give information to the public. The problem is you can't get these ratings from them. We've been trying for 6 months to get the rating on the young lady that was accused of killing her 2 kids, and they won't release this stuff. In fact, in our last legislative session, the Vera Institute had got a bill sponsored that would make all of this information confidential to where you can't get it. The problem that we have with our institute is they're essentially turning the defendant into a victim. They talk about people being held pre-trial, unable to take care of their families, unable to go to work, unable to pay the rent. And I'm sorry, but in the world I grew up in, one of the reasons you didn't get in trouble was because, the deterrence factor. They used to have commercials at drunk driving at thousands in legal bills, thousands in fines and fees. I mean, the idea that you could actually spend time in jail was trying to keep you from getting in trouble in the first place. And Vera turns it around and makes the fact that you're stuck in jail because you chose to commit a crime an unfair punishment by me and you. We shouldn't punish people for making bad decisions.
"19 people shot during a Mother's Day second line. The man police say pulled the trigger, Akeem Scott, had been arrested on gun and heroin charges just months before the mass shooting.
Now the organization that rated Scott as a low risk to the community is in line to get another $500,000 from the city to work with the courts. Mike Perlstein has details in this eyewitness investigation.
Akeem Scott is a household name in New Orleans for being the accused gunman in the Mother's Day second-line shooting that left 19 people wounded. Scott also is known in courthouse circles for this, his low-risk rating of a 3 out of a possible 24 after his arrest on gun and heroin charges months before the brazen attack. The score came from a pre-trial risk assessment conducted by the Vera Institute, a nonprofit agency that was paid nearly $500,000 by the city last year to help judges determine which arrestees are a good bet for release on low or free bond.
I personally think it's a complete waste of money.
Akeem Scott's bail at $10 million.
The program has been highly touted by the mayor, city council, DA's office, and public defender's office, but a growing number of detractors are questioning what the city is getting for its money. Defense attorney Robert Hortzberg has questioned the program since it was launched in April 2012.
They are asking the city to contribute over $500,000 to a program to do things that the judges are already getting paid to do, and can easily do, and can do more effectively than what they're doing.
Vera comes up with its assessment scores by answering 12 questions about a defendant's criminal and personal background. But critics say most of Vera's information is already provided to the court, and the 2 answers provided by a defendant aren't reliable. Akeem Scott, for example, told Vera he was a full-time student at Talladega College, when actually the only record of Scott in Alabama was a marijuana arrest.
What can they do that the court can't do? They did not find his arrest in Alabama.
The bail bond industry has openly campaigned against Vera. Matt Dennis of Steve's Bail Bonds has criticized the program in a YouTube video campaign.
If you tell me Akeem Scott before the Mother's Day shooting is a 3 with the charges he had, I would think about ignoring you. If you tell me he's a 7 After shooting 19 people, I would definitely ignore you.
So why does Vera enjoy such strong support from City Hall?
The City of New Orleans, the mayor's office says it led to $2 million in savings. That's a good investment.
John Wool and Ginny Lee, directors of Vera New Orleans, cited the multi-million-dollar savings at a recent City Council committee hearing. That's based on a reduced jail population since the Vera program began. But while Vera showed that pretrial detainees at OPP dropped by about 300 during Vera's first year, that population actually dropped only 99 inmates if you extend the time period by another 6 months.
It saves the city a lot of money to reduce the jail population. You're absolutely right. It cannot be attributed to one specific person.
Perhaps the most serious questions about Vera are raised by its main customers, the criminal and municipal court judges. Desiree Charbonnet is the chief judge of municipal court.
The work that the Vera Institute does, I'm not saying it's not good work again, but it's duplicitous. The information that's provided to us by Vera Institute's pretrial services is the same information that has always been provided to us.
And criminal court judge Ben Willard.
I can tell you this. I do not need a third party giving me information.
Isn't it only as valuable as the judges are willing to make use of it?
Right. I think the problem is that maybe the judges ought to be more inclined to use it.
Instead, the cash-strapped criminal court has lobbied against Vera at closed-door meetings with city officials, pushing to take over the pretrial screening program. So how can taxpayers judge for themselves whether Vera's assessments are worthwhile? Well, they can't, because these assessments, more than 5,000 of them so far, are not public records.
You ask them, how do you verify it? And they'll tell you, well, we just take their word for it. I mean, really? $500,000 a year this program's getting, we're just going to take their word for it. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
Want to talk because the pretrial risk assessment is an integral piece of what your pretrial services program is providing you. And I want to go over quickly what it does and what it does not do. It provides impartial information to the courts regarding release and detention decisions.
Where's the risk assessments, Mr. Wool? You have 5,500 people assessed, and you pay them for assessments, but you don't look at the assessments. Look at the assessments. Akeem Scott was a 3, guys. He's a 6 now. Telly Hankton's an 8. Ted Bundy's a 3.
It predicts the probabilities of risk to the community, meaning the rearrest if that person were to be released. They have the constitutional right to not self-incriminate themselves on that charge. So your pretrial officers, this is very important that you know this, cannot speak to the defendant about their pretrial charges. So that is not information that would be reported to the court because it is against their constitutional right to self-incriminate. Predicts the probability of failure to appear for court. And it predicts the probability of failure to appear for court.
People say they can protect us. You can pre-evaluate somebody to determine if they're a risk. How do they get them back to court? Do they get them back to court? What do they do for the city that's worth $500,000+ that the court doesn't do already?
Philadelphia, they pay $3 million a year for Fugitive Warrant Squad with the pretrial services program. What are we going to do when our police department is sitting here saying, I need more money and more officers so I can return some of the people that the pretrial services program got released on their own signature and a handshake?
Those are the two purposes of the pre-trial period. So this is very important that we understand that that is what a pretrial risk assessment does. So when we're speaking about that, we need to be oriented into what it does and does not do.
In 2012, the City of New Orleans began funding the Vera Institute of Justice. The pretrial services program's stated goal is to reduce the number of people being detained for minor and non-violent charges.
We agree with the mayor that there needs to be a program for low-level, non-violent offenders so that they're not languishing in our jail on taxpayer expense for long periods of time while awaiting trial.
We have already seen a decrease in New Orleans' prison population since District Attorney Leon Canizero enacted a policy to move non-violent misdemeanors from criminal district court to municipal court.
What we found by cases sitting in the criminal court, misdemeanor cases, they were sitting there for a year or 2 years. Someone charged with possession of marijuana, simple battery, criminal trespass.
According to a 2013 study by the University of Texas at Dallas, where more than 22,000 defendants were tracked over an 8-year period, the data clearly shows that felony defendants released on pretrial services bond were between 39 and 56% less likely to appear in court.
Two really important for New Orleans findings from that study. The first is that pretrial services is the least likely form to guarantee the return of a defendant to court. So it's the least effective means available. The second is it is not better, it is false to claim that it is better or in any way predictive of whether the defendant will commit a crime while out.
Vera is supported by New Orleans taxpayers.
When we look at what they bring to the city of New Orleans, we have a lot of experts right here in the city who could do the same thing, and perhaps in a more effective and efficient way, and perhaps more economically as well.
If I had the honor of talking to an elected official, I would talk to them, even if they weren't concerned about victims, which I know they are, I would talk to them about the potential wasted resources. We already don't have enough resources to protect our community, to finance our different courts. So do we want to really take a chance on a program that isn't guaranteed to make these defendants show up? And that just leads to a waste of city dollars that we preciously need to preserve.
Their pay scales, an entry-level clerk position for them with taxpayer money pays more than we're paying our police officers, our firefighters, and those who protect us and risk their lives for the citizens out there on the street.
Is Vera a wise investment of tax dollars?
I can speak for many coaches across the city and many parents across the city when I say that out here on this playground as volunteers and across the city, we can do a lot more with the funding. If you look around this playground, we don't even have facilities to use the restroom. We would like additional help at these playgrounds. We prevent crime. We are the ones that are out here in the grassroots area doing what we need to do to make sure our city is safe.
Erica Matthews, a former pretrial services investigator in Virginia, had a front row seat to pretrial services.
I worked for pretrial services. I started in July of 2005 and I left in February of 2007. I was a pretrial investigator. I left because there became political pressure to alleviate the overcrowding of the jail, and their solution was to go to pretrial and ask pretrial to start releasing more people that we would not have normally released. Rape, robbery, charges such as that.
And that's what we don't want to see happen in New Orleans, because we don't want our victims to be victimized twice.
The Vera Institute has used many different examples of their success, and one of them has been Philly. And this is the Philadelphia Inquirer, 3-day expose on everything pretrial release of a nonprofit type has done to the city. Philly has 51 warrant officers to work over 900 cases apiece. They have over $1 billion in uncollected forfeitures. 210,000 defendants owe bail money to the city of Philly. Not to mention, they paid for all this with taxpayer dollars.
The shocking 2013 Mother's Day shooting in New Orleans put the deficiencies of Vera's pretrial services model on full display.
Fox 8 has obtained a copy of a pretrial services report on Akeem Scott. That report is a tool for judges as they consider setting the bond for suspects, and it gave Akeem Scott a low-risk rating. The pretrial program is run by the Vera Institute.
There's nothing that Vera can tell the court that is going to influence the court's decision that wasn't already available to the court.
Our citizens and elected officials alike would be shocked to learn of the huge hidden cost of the Vera model, because it shifts the responsibility for apprehending fugitives accused of felonies onto an overburdened police department.
After a 2-year experiment costing taxpayers over $1 million, key criminal justice stakeholders are rejecting the Vera model because of its serious flaws. High administrative salaries, a faulty risk assessment tool, and the shift of a massive new responsibility to an overburdened police department. These flaws reveal the Vera model to be a grave risk to public safety.